sure we're streaming. We're streaming. Okay, y'all ready? So today we're going to be talking about reasoning, which we've been talking about reasoning, but today we're going to get a little more specific. So there are two types of reasoning in this world, right? So far up to this point, we've primarily used what's known as inductive reasoning. Now, inductive reasoning is when you're looking for a pattern, or you're just making an observation. Okay? So think of a detective. A detective goes out to a crime scene and he tries to observe things, right? He looks at stuff. Now he may come up in his mind who he thinks did the crime. But can he get them arrested just based on what he sees and thinks? He can't. What does he have to have before he can get them arrested? Before he can go get an arrest warrant, a detective has to have some facts. He has to have fingerprints that put him at the scene. He has to have a smoking gun or a confession or something like that, right? So that's where the other type of reasoning comes in, and that is deductive reasoning. And deductive reasoning is what we're going to be using today. Deductive reasoning is totally based on facts. Okay? Now, you use this all the time. Say, for example, and I use this as the example always. You guys know what makes a square. What makes a square? Four sides that are what? Equal. And what are the angles? They have to be 90 degrees, right? So if I give you this picture right here, what do you know that is? You know that's a square. Now, yes, you are making an observation, but you're drawing your conclusion based on the facts that it is 4 90-degree angles and 4 congruent sides. That's deductive reasoning. Do y'all understand that? Y'all with me? Okay, now, I gotta make sure I don't get lost. When we're talking about deductive reasoning, we have two kinds basically. So we have the law of detachment. And then we have another one, and I'm going to put it down here. You don't have to worry about writing this one yet. We'll come back to it in a minute. We have the law of syllogism. I just don't want to forget to go over it, okay? So we've got the law of detachment and the law of syllogism. Now, the law of detachment says that if you have a conditional statement that you know is true, like you know it's a true conditional statement, and I tell you that P is true, then the conclusion that you can draw is that Q must be true in a given scenario. Okay? So, an example of that would be, let's look at number 1 on your, let's look at number 1 on your skills practice side. If the sum of the measures of two angles is 180 degrees, then the angles are supplementary. We know that's a true statement, right? Supplementary angles are angles who add up to 180 degrees. Now, if I tell you that the measure of angle A and the measure of angle B equals 180, what is the conclusion that you can draw? Angle A and angle B must be supplementary. How do we know that? Because if the sum of the measures of two angles is 180, then the angles are supplementary. Do y'all see how that works? So, is this conclusion that they put true? Yes. So we would say it is valid. We say it's a valid conclusion. Wake up, Cameron. Stand up, shake, move around, something. Wake up. Don't let yourself fall asleep. You gotta pay attention. Focus. Okay? Look at number 2. If the sum of the measure of two angles is 90, then the angles are complementary. Is that a true conditional statement? If the sum of the measure of two angles is 90, then the angles are complementary. Is that a true statement? Yes. Now, if I tell you the measure of angle ABC is 45 and the measure of angle DEF is 48, so that's the information that you're given, right? And the conclusion that they draw is that the angle ABC and angle DEF are complementary. Is that a valid conclusion? It's not, is it? Why not?
It doesn't equal up to 90.
They don't equal up to 90. So this is invalid. And since it's invalid, we need to say why it's invalid. Well, it's invalid because the measure of angle ABC plus the measure of angle DEF do not equal 90 degrees. Now, that's a sentence. It's just a mathematical sentence, not a written English sentence. Okay? Are you ready to do number 3? Y'all need a minute. Okay, number 3. If the sum of the measures of two angles is 180, then the angles are supplementary. Now, is that true? Is the sum, if they add up to 180, are they supplementary? That's true, right? Now, they give you this information. Angle 1 and angle 2 are a linear pair. Now, let's bring back our memory. What does linear pair mean? What is a linear pair? Pair means what? 2. So we know we're talking about two angles. That's pair, right? Linear means, what does linear mean? What's the root word of linear? Line, right? So linear means line. So if we've got a pair of angles that make a line, what do we know they do? Pair of angles that make a line. Two angles put together that make a line. No, you are thinking different than what I'm thinking. No, you're making this harder than what it is. All right, Zaylee, look up your notes. What you got?
Two adjacent angles that are supplementary.
So a linear pair is when you have two adjacent angles that are supplementary. Okay? Linear pair. They make a line, and it's two, right? They have to be touching, so they have to be adjacent, and they are supplementary. So here is our conclusion. Angle 1 and angle 2 are supplementary. So let's go back to this. If they're a linear pair, do they add up to 180? If they make a line, the two angles, do they add up to 180? Yes. So does that mean they're supplementary? Yes, together. Together. The pair is supplementary. So is our conclusion valid or invalid? Valid. Okay? Y'all see how that works. If it's valid, you don't have to give a reason, right? Because it's valid. Okay, so let's look at our other type of reasoning under deductive reasoning. It's called the law of syllogism. Now, the law of syllogism says that if you have one conditional statement where you know if P is true, then Q is true, and then you have another conditional statement that says if Q is true, using this Q right here, right, then R is true, then you can draw the conclusion that if P is true, then R must be true. So this is similar to if A equals B and B equals C. B does equal A, that's true. And B equals C. What do you know about A and C? They equal each other. Y'all see how that works, right? Well, this is the same concept. We're just talking about sentences. conditional statements. So if we go back to our skills practice worksheet and we look at 4 through 7, so we're trying to determine, is it a valid conclusion or not? So they're giving us some statements. No, I just said that wrong. We're trying to draw a valid conclusion based on what they gave us. So if two angles are complementary, then the sum of their measure is 90. If the sum of the measure of two angles is 90, then both of the angles are acute. So we're going to go from one statement to the other statement. If two angles are complementary, that's our P, right? The sum of their measures is 90, that's our Q. Then in our second sentence, look what they're using. The sum of the measure of two angles is 90. Y'all seen that before? Where was that located? Right there, right? That's our Q. Then both of the angles are acute. That's our R. New letter, because we needed something to represent something different, right? Remember we just said, if P then Q is true, and Q then R is true, then we know that if P then R is true. So in this case, that would be if two angles, I'm going to abbreviate, are complementary, then both of the angles are acute. Now, is that a true statement? Is that a valid conclusion? It is. Because if they add up to 90, they both have to be smaller than 90. Right? You can't have bigger than 90. Either angle can't be bigger than 90. Does this make sense to you? Okay, let's go ahead and do another one. Yes, sir. Mm-mm. No, I can't take a flu shot. Mm-hmm. I have an allergy that I can't take it. Thank you.
I guess I was just saying there to the ball player.
Oh yeah. Bye. Huh? I don't know. Have they given them out? I don't know. I have no idea. I didn't even know they'd given them out. What, did they give them to you in English or something? Normally we get them for first period and hand them out to our first period class, but I guess they changed that. Okay. If the heat wave continues, then air conditioning will be used more frequently. So what is our P in this sentence? The heat wave continues. That's our P, right? What's our Q? Air conditioning will be used more frequently. Okay, now second sentence. If air conditioning is used more frequently, y'all notice that we are repeating what we just said. If air conditioning is used more frequently, then what happens? Energy costs will be higher. So the conclusion that we can draw is we take our first hypothesis. If the heat wave continues, what happens? What can we jump to? Exactly. Then energy cost will be higher. Okay? All right, so number 6. If it is a Tuesday, then Marla tutors chemistry. It is a Tuesday. Marla tutors chemistry. If Marla tutors chemistry, then she arrives home at 4 p.m. What conclusion can we draw?
on like 4 p.m.
If it is Tuesday. Now we need to make a tiny correction there, Zaylene. If it is Tuesday, can we put she in there? No. What we're going to have to do, we got to put her name in there because we don't know who she is if we don't put her name, right? So if it is Tuesday, I forgot the word then Marla arrives home at 4 p.m. So we don't have to say that she's tutoring, right? We just know if it's Tuesday, she's going to be home at 4. Now, why is that? Because she's tutoring. But we don't have to say that. Okay, it's understood. So number 7. If a marine animal is a starfish, then it lives in the intertidal zone of the ocean. The intertidal zone is the least stable of the ocean zones. So what conclusion can you draw here? If a marine animal, let me get that down, okay? If a marine animal is a starfish, then what? Okay, so they told us that it lives in the intertidal zone.
Did it live in the least stable of the ocean zone?
That's correct. So they told us that it lives in the intertidal zone, but then they gave us this piece of information about the intertidal zone. Now, they didn't make it an if-then statement, but that doesn't change that piece of information, right? So then it lives in the least stable ocean zones. Okay? All right. Y'all see, this is not that difficult, is it? This is doing what you've done all your life with information. You do this every day. You're given some statements and you draw conclusions based on those statements, right? We do this every single day. Now we're just applying it to our math. All right? Okay, your assignment is the practice side. You have 15 minutes in class. There is no reason why you can't finish that in class. Okay, you do have an interactive worksheet. Please use capital sentences. No, you can just type it. You do not have to write on it. Okay, let me stop this video.